On this third Sunday in the Rugby World Cup in 2023, Pool B game was played between Scotland and Tonga in beautiful Nice in France. In this video, I'm going to review that game. Hello and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan who's living in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And I'm covering all the Rugby World Cup this year, as well as rugby continuing on after that as well. So welcome to my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd appreciate you to hit that little subscription button and follow along the journey as we continue on this amazing Rugby World Cup. Now, this Pool B game was going to be always very interesting. Scotland coming off the back of that loss against South Africa, and Tonga having their first game and also losing in this year's Rugby World Cup. So it was set up for a good battle in Nice today. And so going into this game, a few things that I was looking out for from both teams. First of all, Scotland, I was just going to be interested to see whether they played a very open, free-flowing game of rugby against Tonga. I thought that could have been the way to run over the top of this Tongan team, and also keeping the pressure on for 80 minutes. I'm sure that the Tongans at some stage were going to get a little bit lazy and their defence would drop off. For Tonga, I thought they had to be big, but not only in the tackles, they also had to be able to punch up through the attacking line, and that was something that I was looking for them in this particular game, because they didn't show that too much in their first game. And of course, discipline was going to be a big one in this game for Tonga. Could they keep all their players on the field for the duration of the game, and could they keep that penalty count down to a minimum? Those are the things that I was looking forward to at before this game got underway in Nice today. So right from the get-go, it was Scotland who showed their intention, and Blair Kinghorn had a fantastic kick through and ran down towards the Tongan try line to try and score a try, but unfortunately he knocked it on right under the post, and Scotland were denied an opening try in the first 2 minutes of this game. But Scotland had shown their intent through the way they moved the ball, and of course with Finn Russell at number 10 for Scotland, he was going to be the maestro of the orchestra today for Scotland. So a great start for Scotland. So we didn't have to wait long though for Scotland to actually get a try, and it was 2 minutes later in the 4th minute of the game from a line-out maul where George Turner combined with the rest of his mates in the forwards and went diving over for the first Scottish try of the game. So Scotland were out in the lead by 5 points to 0 straight away. So it was a really good try by Scotland, and it came from a line-out maul, and I anticipated that Scotland were going to give Tonga a bit of a lesson in line-outs today. Tonga didn't do well in their line-outs in their first game, and this was coming back to bite them already in the beginning of this game against Scotland. So Finn Russell got the conversion over from that try from Turner, and Scotland shot off to a 7-0 lead after just 5 minutes in the game. Then Tonga went down to the other end of the field and got on to attack, and they put together a very good scrum, and they got a scrum penalty from that. And William Havili, the number 10 for Tonga, stepped up and kicked the penalty goal, so we were back to 7 points to 3 after 8 minutes. And it was interesting to note what was going to happen in the scrums today. I thought Tonga put out a very good pack, but again, they have to be very disciplined at set pieces, and both their line out and scrummage play, as far as I was concerned today, was under a lot of scrutiny. I'm sure Gregor Townsend and his team would have put together a plan on how to disrupt both the Tongan line out and also to beat them in the scrums. So it was interesting to watch how those two aspects of play unfolded in the beginning of this game. Then for the next 6 or 7 minutes, the game really opened up a bit, and both teams had opportunities to run the ball, and they did so. And we saw a couple of big hits coming in from Malakai Fekitoa for Tonga on some of the Scottish attempts at breaking through their defence. And I was pleased to see Fekitoa actually stepping up and having an emphasis in this game. He's been a little bit quiet for me in recent games, and he's one of those players that if he goes out there and he gets a bit of confidence going, then he can build into a game, and he did a couple of good things in that first 15 minutes of the game. But the ball was seesawing between the two sides. Both teams were having a go, and it took Finn Russell to do a fantastic 50-22 kick that took Scotland back onto attack down into the Tongan 22. By the 16th minute of the game, Scotland were dominating in the lineouts, and they'd won 4 out of 4. But the ball then started going a bit of aerial ping pong between the two teams, and it was quite interesting. But Tonga ended up on attack, and they did a very good move down the blind side, putting Carter, their winger, away for a good try in the corner, and they caught the Scottish defence lapping a little bit, I felt there, but it was a good move from Tonga. Some good hands in the play, and Carter, who's a big solid boy on the wing, got through and scored a good try for Tonga. So that was on the 20th minute mark, and William Havili got the conversion over for Tonga. So we saw Tonga in the lead by 10 points to 7 at that stage, and it was pretty interesting of what was going on. I don't think. Then we saw some discipline issues within the tackles from Tonga starting to have an impact on the game, and it actually led to the next try of the game, which was scored by Duhan van der Merwe for Scotland. A very good try down the left-hand side. He went straight in and scored the try, and that came on the back of a tackle defence issue for Tonga. This happens quite a bit to the Pacific nations in the tackle area when they get a little bit ill-disciplined and they start mistiming their tackles, and that's what happened in this particular situation. So the try was scored by Van der Merwe, and the conversion was missed by Finn Russell at that stage. So Scotland were ahead by 12 points to 10. So more discipline issues in the tackle area for Tonga in the 29th minute, and it gave Scotland the opportunity to get down onto attack again. And once again, as the good teams tend to do, they came away with points, and this time it was Kyle Steyn who got through for a really good try for Scotland. Unfortunately, Finn Russell missed the conversion of that try, so Scotland were now out to 17 points to 10. Then just from the kickoff, we saw Tonga getting back onto attack, and they had 3 or 4 really good phases of play pushing up towards the Scottish line, but then they dropped the ball. And once again, we see with these Pacific Island nation teams sometimes the ill discipline around ball carry, retaining possession of the ball, and just execution of the pass can let them down sometimes, and that's what happened to Tonga on attack. Now, you were thinking that if this was Ireland or South Africa or New Zealand or France maybe, then they probably would have kept the ball in hand and got in for a try. And these are just another indications on what happens with the pressure in a Rugby World Cup, but also just the difference between the top teams and some of these lesser playing rugby nations who are still trying to evolve their game to get to this high performance level. And unfortunately, Tonga were let down in that situation. If they'd scored then, they would have really brought themselves back into this game and put a lot of pressure back onto Scotland. That didn't happen, and Scotland were able to clear the ball from their line. And then in the 33rd minute, we saw that pressure that was being put on Tonga just elevate a little bit more, and Tamao Piau, the winger for Tonga, went in with a head clash in a tackle, and he got yellow carded, and Tonga were down to 14 men. And I'm sure their head coach Kefu would have said to these boys at the beginning of the game, look, stay on the field, we can't afford to go down to 14 men in this game. And that's exactly what happened just before half time. And unfortunately for Tonga, things got worse because Scotland were able to counteract that particular play, take advantage of the fact that Tonga were down to 14 men, and Rory Darge went in for a great try right on half time for Scotland. So a 7-pointer scored for Scotland on the stroke of half time, taking them out to 24 points to 10. And by that stage, I think Gregor Townsend and his troops would have been fairly happy, thinking they were going to run away with this game in the second half. For Tonga, unfortunately, the first half led them into that situation where their ill discipline in tackles and also in the scrummaging area just brought them undone a little bit, because it kept putting the pressure on them as Scotland took territorial possession and advantage from those ill-disciplined moments. This game in the first half was every time Scotland got an opportunity to go down into the Tongan half, they were able to convert that into points by scoring tries. There was no penalty kicks in that first half for Scotland, and they were just able to keep their pedal on the metal when it came to converting those ill-disciplined opportunities. Tonga would have been fairly upset, I think, going in at half-time with that score. And once again, we saw in their attacking phases as well, just that last ball being passed or the last runner not coming onto the ball properly, the ball being dropped, just handing the ball back to the opposition. That's something that came out of the first game that Kefu talked about with these Tongan players, that while they've got the ball in possession, they've got to hold on to it a bit longer. And out of that first game that Tonga played, when they did have the ball in possession, they only held on to it for 24 seconds each time, and that's not long enough in these games against the top teams in World Rugby. So in the first half, some good standout players for Scotland. Sutherland was playing well in the forwards. Darge was getting in there and making himself busy. Ritchie was also very good and getting a lot of balls, so some good play there. In the backs, of course, Finn Russell was the orchestra conductor and making sure that those bullet passes that he was passing out to his outside backs were being not only good but very effective in opening up gaps. Kinghorn, I mentioned, came in a couple of times and looked dangerous when he did. He's got that big height advantage as well over his opposition, so we saw him taking a couple of high balls in the first half. And over the whole field, I just thought Scotland had more firepower and more direct play. When they did get the ball and they were on attack, they looked like they were going to break the line through the Tongan defence. On the other side, Tonga, when they did get the ball, they ran across the field a little bit more. They were reliant on their wing Kata to come in and make a difference. Piatau tried a couple of times, but they weren't really effective in getting through the Scottish defence. When they did get a break, it was normally through their forwards. Fifita played really well in the first half, and of course their huge captain in number 3, Ben Tauiafuna, who was absolutely massive and playing very well in the first half. So 24-10 at half time, and I for one thought Scotland were probably going to run away with this in the second half, based on probably Tonga's discipline getting worse and also them getting a little bit lazy in the last 20 minutes. So how did it pan out? Oh, let's find out. So before the second half got underway, we found out that Ritchie for Scotland went off with an HIA assessment, and he ended up staying off the field for the rest of the game. Of course, World Rugby is very cautious around head contacts and head clashes in rugby these days, so they weren't going to risk anything, and it was good that Ritchie actually stayed off the field for Scotland. The yellow card was then deemed by the bunker to stay a yellow card, so Tonga weren't going to go down to 14 men for the rest of this game. Tamio Pinu was allowed to come back on for the second half of the game. Now the second half started off well for Tonga. I thought they put some good defensive plays together. Scotland were trying to run the ball at them, and they kept Scotland out for those first few minutes of the second half. Now we got to the 43rd minute of this game, and it was the first time that Tonga had a throw into the line out in the match. I don't know how often that happens where one team doesn't get to have a throw into the line out until the second half of a game. Omen for Tonga to get the line out at that stage of the game, and after a couple of quick phases of play, Tonga went on to the attack, and the ball came out to Ben Tauiafuna, that 150 kilo giant of a captain for Tonga. He was 12 metres out from the goal line of Scotland, and I can tell you there wasn't anything on this planet that was going to stop Ben from scoring a try, and exactly that's what happened. He went over and scored a try. William Havili got the conversion over, and all of a sudden we had a game on with Scotland ahead 24 points to 17, and it was a good way for Tonga to start the second half and give them some momentum going forward. So a great try to Ben. And I would probably give Tonga the first 7 or 8 minutes of the second half. I think they played better. They had good ball on attack. We had at the 47th minute mark, we had Piatau from the fullback position, and Tonga doing a great 50-22, which put Tonga back on attack. Unfortunately, they lost the line out and Scotland came away with the ball. But it was a good period of play for Tonga. They got the score back to 24-17, as I mentioned, and I thought there might have been an opportunity for them to really get back into this game. But that's when Gregor Townsend pulled the ripcord and decided to bring on a bunch of reserves for Scotland. Around that time, Tonga got a penalty inside the Scottish 22. Instead of taking the kick for goal, they went for a line-out, hoping they could win the line-out and do some damage with their maul. But unfortunately, they didn't secure possession from the line-out. And again, we saw this in a factor in the game throughout. Just when Tonga needed them to have secure hands, to maintain possession, they lost the ball and gave a turnover. And when we look at the statistics at the end of the game, Tonga handed over the ball 11 times to Scotland when they were inside the Scottish half. So that's something you can't afford to do in these types of games, because when you're down in the opposition half, you need to be able to convert that into points. and if you're giving the ball back or turning the ball over to your opposition, it gives them an opportunity to clear out, and that's exactly what Scotland did in this situation. And then in the 53rd minute of the game, we saw one of the plays of the game when Duhan van der Merwe got the ball inside his own half. He pushed off Kata, the Tongan winger, and then he jinked about going on a run up the left hand side. He bet 2 or 3 players, and then he had his halfback replacement Horn who'd come on supporting him on the left hand side. Van der Merwe passed it out to Horn, and Horn went in for a great Scottish try. And I think that one broke the back of the Tongans, because that try came out of nothing, and it was a bit of a weak defensive situation for Tonga. Van der Merwe should not have been able to go through 3 or 4 tacklers as he did, and then he was still able to get the pass away to Horn. So a bit of brilliance from Van der Merwe, but also a bit of weak defence from the Tongan players, and they should have stopped Scotland on that particular try, I thought. But they didn't, and it was another good Scotland try. So the try was scored in the corner. Finn Russell stood up, took the conversion and belted it over, and all of a sudden Scotland were out to 31 points to 17, and we thought pretty much that the game was safe at this stage as we were entering the last 20 minutes. Now this is where I had anticipated that Tonga might fall over a bit in the last 20 minutes as they got a little bit tired, as they brought on some of their substitutes, and as their discipline probably fell away a little bit. So I wanted to make sure I made a record of what happened in that last 20 minutes, particularly in this game, both from a Scottish point of view, to see whether they would kick on with the game, and to see what happened with Tonga in the last 20 minutes. And it was really interesting what did happen in the last 20 minutes of this game, because Scotland scored 2 more converted tries, Tonga didn't score any more points, and they lost another player to a yellow card at Tonga. So there we go. The last 20 minutes of these games is absolutely vital, and Scotland were able to kick away as Tonga got more and more tired. The discipline fell off for Tonga, the tackles fell off for Tonga, and right up until the 81st minute when this game ended, Scotland were throwing everything at Tonga and giving it a go. So Darcy Graham scored a try in the last seconds of this particular game after coming on as a replacement in the game. So it was a good performance by Scotland. It wasn't a sensational performance. I really noted throughout this game the difference in quality between what we saw last night between Ireland and South Africa. And at the moment, the way the Scots are playing, they're very reliant on Finn Russell to get them going forward. And if any team is able to step up and stop Finn Russell, a bit like the South Africans did, then that has a massive impact on this Scottish team. So I think they need to find some ways of playing the game a little bit more. They've got the weaponry out back in their backs. Hugh Jones is good, he came on. Lote, of course, who's got Tongan parents, he came on. He was already on in this game. He's a good player. And of course you've got people like Duhan van der Merwe, Darcy Graham on the wings, and you've got that big figure of Blair Kinghorn at fullback. So I think Scotland need to take the play a little bit away from Finn Russell. They're too reliant on him. And like South Africa did, they were able to read him. And I think that's what's going to happen in the Irish game too, against Scotland in a couple of weeks' time, if Scotland don't come up with a plan B. But I just noticed the gap between these two top teams of Ireland and South Africa last night, the class of play, the speed of the breakdown, but also the quality in holding possession. That was the big thing. So at times today, Scotland got a little bit sloppy. They dropped a few balls, they knocked a few balls on, and the flow of the game just stopped every now and again, and we didn't see that last night in the intense battle between the Springboks and Ireland in that particular game. So I think Scotland's going to have to go up a couple of notches indeed if they think they're going to beat Ireland. I can't see that happening on current form, but you never know what Gregor Townsend might be able to do with this team in the next couple of weeks. Now Scotland have got Romania next in their group, and Tonga are going to turn around already in 1 week and take on the Springboks. So that's going to be a huge game for them. And I can see a bit of a mauling coming up for Tonga in that game, because I think the Springboks are going to drill all over the top of Tonga. And again, we're going to see their weakness in the last quarter of this game against South Africa, and I think they're going to be put to the sword. But hope I'm proven wrong and that Tonga can come back. I think Tonga did play better than they did in their first game. I think their first game run was good for them, but they came up against a Scottish team today who were very good in adapting to running the ball from different angles. And Finn Russell was on fire. He was bulleting passes out to his outside backs. He was putting them through gaps and basically setting up the plays for Scotland. And another thing that we saw in last night's game, how important goal kicking is. Finn Russell stood up today, had a very high percentage of goal kicking, was very good from the tee, as was William Havili from the Tongan team as well. I think the Fifita boys had a very good game until Via Fifita took that cheap shot on Finn Russell in the last 4 minutes of the game, got a yellow card, got sent off deservedly for that. There was no need for that. He went straight into the ruck with no arms in the tackle, and went straight for Finn Russell's head. We don't need that in World Rugby, that sort of play, so I would expect to see him get a red card and a suspension from that play, justifiably so as well. Tonga tried hard throughout the game. I think their forwards had a fairly good impact for a while. Their line out wasn't very secure, but their big issue is being able to hold on to the ball. So when they do set up various phases of play, they turn the ball over and they give the opposition a big chance of getting back at them. And I think this is something Tonga's really going to have to focus on, because when you turn over the ball to your opposition, you're giving away that possession, and 9 times out of 10, as we saw today, they gave away a lot of territory as well. So a lot of things to work on in 1 week for Tonga as they turn around to get ready for that big game against South Africa. They've got no chance now of getting out of the pool in this group, so they're just going to have to play with their pride and see what they can do for the Pacific nations in the rest of this Rugby World Cup. Scotland are going to have to take it up a notch, because they're going to have a very good win against Romania. They're going to have to get bonus points in that game. They're going to have to restrict Romania from scoring as much as well, and then they're going to set themselves up for that big game against Ireland. I think they've got it all to play for Scotland. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I think it's going to be a big struggle after the way we've seen Ireland and Scotland playing so far in this Rugby World Cup. I'm going to say it right here and now. Ireland and South Africa are my favourites to go through from Pool B in this year's Rugby World Cup. But a good win in the end from Scotland. They did what they had to do. They scored a good number of bonus point tries there against Tonga. It was a close game there for a while up until half time, where Tonga may have come back into it. But as we expected, Tonga fell off in the second half. Their discipline cost them, and they let in 2 converted tries in that last 20 minutes of the game, as well as taking on board another yellow card. So let's see what happens for these two teams in the rest of the Rugby World Cup. It's going to be interesting. And so if you watched the game today between Tonga and Scotland, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Were there any standout players from your point of view, whether you're a Tongan supporter or a Scottish supporter, or you're one of the rugby neutral supporters from around the world? I'd love to hear from you in the comments about this particular game. What do you think Scotland needs to do to get any chance against Ireland? And what do you think Tonga needs to do to get a couple of wins in their remaining games in this Rugby World Cup? Do you think they can do it? I look forward to all of your comments below this video. Now don't forget, you can follow me right here on Inside Rugby for the remainder of the Rugby World Cup and beyond. I'm going to be following World Rugby throughout the rest of the year, and your subscription would be very much appreciated if you like my videos. Don't forget to go back and check out my review of the Irish versus South Africa game. It was one hell of a game by 2 great teams, and it was a very narrow margin of victory at the end, I thought, as well. Okay, that's it for this particular video. I'll be back again soon. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone, and keep enjoying the Rugby World Cup 2023 from France. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.